Let's roll. Get this game rolling. For Hans.
What did I fall there?
I really thought you were gonna call when you said 30 more of these, huh? And I was like, oh goddamn. I was like, here it goes. I call.
In this video for CoinPoker.com, we are playing 500, 1,000, 2,000 at Hustler Casino Live, $1 million deep. Hands raises it up in the hijack seat with ace-9 of spades. Peter calls the cutoff with queen-10 offsuit. Tom Dwan calls the middle blind, the big blind, with jack-8 offsuit. Tom, you're out of position. There's somebody yet to act. You gotta fold marginal offsuit hands. Doug Polk calls from the straddle with king-8 of hearts. Let's go to the flop.
Get a raise here from Hans, whatever you want to call the guy. The guy with the beautiful hands, clearly, as we look at a queen-high flop. Got an action flop here for sure. Tom Dwan has flopped a straight. Peter with top 2. We have been kind of waiting for our first action flop of the day, and we've got one.
The flop is a doozy. Queen of diamonds, 10 of spades, 9 of hearts. Doug Polk has a gut shot. Hands has bottom pair with backdoor flush draw. Peter has top 2 pair, and Tom Dwan has the second nut straight. Maybe playing the jack-8 pays off. Tom checks. Doug Polk checks. Hands checks. Over to Peter. He makes a small bet, 6,000 into the 22,000 pot with the top 2 pair, which I think is actually very reasonable. In multi-way pots, you typically want to bet using a small-ish size because very rarely, or never, do you have a big range and or nut advantage, which will usually result in you betting small when you do decide to bet. Small and infrequent. That's the strategy in multi-way pots. Also, on boards where there's already a straight or flush possible, or if the board's paired, typically in those scenarios, you also want to bet small because all of your opponents are going to have some combinations of the super nuts in their range. And whenever you don't have the super nuts, ideally you want to minimize your losses. So nice bet size by Peter with the top 2 pair. Let's see how Tom with the straight proceeds.
Tom Dwan, who was our biggest loser yesterday, up against the biggest winner, Peter, and it's 2 pair versus the straight. And Doug Polk is the one raising.
Tom Dwan, tricky, trappy, 2024 decides to just call with a straight. I probably would have bumped it up right here immediately and just tried to load money in the pot against 2 pairs, 1 pairs with backdoor draws or open-ended straight draws, etc. Tom gets tricky though. And then, much to my surprise, Doug Polk decides gut shot, backdoor flush draw, and overcard is good enough. 32,000. He's feeling it. Bad timing. Let's see what happens now. You all told me that you wanted to play poker against me and the poker coaching coaches. So, every week for the next year, we are hosting a $2,000 free roll on CoinPoker.com. To get in the game, head over right now to pokercoaching.com/freeroll. I'll see you there. Top 2 pair decides to call, as does the jack-8. You may say, should Tom be re-raising and loading money into the pot now? Because he has the second nuts. It's a tough spot, because Tom's out of position, which is never great, but also, he could just be against the king-jack, and that is a hand that makes a whole lot of sense to raise. So, while I do realize it is very tempting just to re-raise second nuts and load the money in, you gotta realize they're playing $1 million deep, and the pot is nowhere near that. So, I certainly don't fault Tom for just calling in this spot. Let's go 3 ways to the turn. Straight versus 2 pair versus nothing.
Dwan makes the call, $119,000 in the pot. Blank on the turn. Dwan now 83% to win the hand if it goes to showdown.
turn is the 4 of clubs. Tom's going to check everything in this spot, I presume. Doug Polk did not improve to a flush draw or a straight, so he decides to give up. Very, very wise. And then Peter decides to check it back with the top 2 pair, which I also think is probably not such a bad play in this spot, although value betting certainly could be reasonable. You do have to be very careful of Tom Dwan in this spot, especially if you think he is a tricky, trappy player in general. Doug Polk is basically never going to have the nuts, I think, when he checks the turn, although maybe he does, I don't know. So for that reason, I think Queen 10 can probably get away with a value bet, just extract value from Queen Jack, Jack 10, 10 9, stuff like that. But, you know, Peter took the cautious route, and this time he was definitely right. Let's go to the river.
Peter checks it. Oh, wow. Peter ran like a god yesterday, and he continues. He checks back the turn and fills up on the river. Dwan betting for value here. He has no reason to think that his straight isn't good. And he bet 72,000, and Peter has the stones. He's got the absolute nutter balls.
The river is a disaster for Tom Dwan. Maybe Jack 8's not so good after all. It's the nuts for Peter. Tom Dwan makes a chunky $72,000 bet into the $119,000 pot. Doug Polk realizes this is not the spot to bluff. He folds. It gets around to Peter. Before we see what he does, what I want to know is, do you think he would have called 72,000 if the river was a blank? Like a 3? Take a second. Think about it. Let me know in the comment section below. Then we'll see what Peter does in this spot. While you're down there, by the way, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and make sure you check out the link in the description for the $2,000 weekly poker coaching free roll for all of you.
191,000 over to Peter. Just a question of how much does he raise, and can Dwan get away from it?
Front row. We're sitting courtside.
And Peter checking back the turn, going to be incredibly difficult to put him on a full house right now. Each one of those purple chips, there's 25K each.
Huh.
There's the reaction from Dwan. Yeah. After just a brutal day yesterday, it continues in day 2.
What's going on?
$415,000 pot.
I definitely think Peter would have called on the vast majority of rivers if he did not improve. That said, this time he improves and he bumps it up $224,000 straight up for value. I love it. Let's see if Tom can find the nitty fold with the flopped second nuts.
Dwan with the straight.
My brain's not working enough to find a language.
What a cagey check back from Peter.
Picking up today where we left off yesterday, huh?
Yeah. Just Peter's raising the river. I'm in a spot where, like, how can he have it? But He's got to have it. And then
How can he have it? But he's got to have it.
what? How much more is it? 150.
152,000 back to Dwan. Pot is 415.
I think it's 152. Right?
152.
How much is in there? 32 plus 20, 116.
Dwan trying to figure out the odds here. He's getting
116.
less than 3 to 1, maybe 2.7 to 1. Rough math.
152 more. Oh. You don't have a set, right? Do you really have Queen 10 or Queen 9? I feel like you check it. I don't feel like you check it. I feel like I'm never good, but how can I be beat? What the f? Can you have like ace queen? Maybe? I don't think so. 3 put cheese, sorry. Ooh, 1 second. 1 minute.
Dwan takes a lot of heat for taking a lot of time, but this is a difficult spot. Peter, an absolute statue.
I just don't feel like he chats too far. Chats so fast, too. Just so fast.
There's the call.
Oh, yeah.
And a little bit of a slow roll as he says nuts.
Oh my lord.
At a $567,000 pot, the biggest pot of the night so far. Right where we left
You're
off,
GM
exactly.
now.
After a long thought, Tom Dwan makes the call. And I certainly don't fault him for making the call on the spot because, you know, maybe Peter's running a bluff or overvaluing just 3 of a kind, especially given the turn went check, check, check. That said, on the river, when you bet, especially when you bet medium or big, and then someone raises, alarm bell should be going off in your head. This time, though, Tom could not get off the hook. I'll talk to you next time.